Have you ever been in a situation where someone you love more than life itself suddenly makes you feel like a stranger, like you don't belong anymore? Before I tell you my story, let me ask you, where are you watching from right now? Is it morning, evening, or the middle of the night in your time zone? I'd love to know, because maybe, just maybe, my story will mirror something you've seen or felt in your own life. No matter where you are, America, Europe, Asia, family heartbreak speaks the same language everywhere. My name is Daniel Carter. I am 58 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and for most of my life, I was nothing more than a simple working man, a father who believed his entire worth was wrapped around one thing: giving my only daughter, Emily, the best life she could possibly have. I worked long hours at a manufacturing plant, came home covered in grease and sweat, and still managed to cook dinner, help with homework, and read her bedtime stories. Softly, my wife, Sarah, passed away when Emily was only 9 years old. That was the first time I felt like my soul had been ripped out of me. She was my high school sweetheart, the love of my life, and losing her was like losing half of myself. But I couldn't collapse. I had Emily. She became my reason to keep breathing. I became both father and mother overnight, and in those years I gave up everything: promotions, nights out, even friendships, because Emily was my world. She would crawl into my lap at night, her little voice whispering, "Daddy, don't ever leave me." And I swore I never would. Emily grew into a brilliant young woman. She loved books, had a laugh that could fill a room, and a stubbornness that reminded me so much of Sarah. Softly, I remember sitting at her high school graduation, tears in my eyes, clapping so loud people turned to look at me. She was valedictorian. And when she got into college, I sold my old pickup truck, worked extra shifts, anything to make sure she never had to worry about money for books or housing. Parents listening right now, have you ever sacrificed something huge for your children and never regretted it for even a second? That's what fatherhood felt like to me. Then came Jason. He walked into her life during her senior year of college. Polished, confident, the kind of man who speaks and people nod just because of the way he carries himself. From day one, something in me resisted him. Parents, tell me in the comments, have you ever had that gut instinct, that quiet warning in your stomach about someone? I had it with Jason. But Emily was in love. She was glowing, alive in a way I hadn't seen since she was a little girl. So I bit my tongue. At their wedding, as I walked her down the aisle, my hands trembled. Not because I was letting her go, because in my heart I feared I was handing her over to someone who would never truly cherish the little girl I raised. But I smiled, because that's what fathers do. We hide the storm so our children can stand in the sunshine. After the wedding, Emily insisted I move in with them. "Dad, this house is too big for just Jason and me," she said. "You'll never be alone again." I hesitated. I didn't want to be a burden. But after years of eating dinners alone, after years of silence in a house, Sarah once filled with laughter, I gave in. At first, it was beautiful. Morning coffee together. Emily teasing me about how I still folded laundry like a soldier. Family dinners where I told stories about Sarah. And even Jason pretended to laugh. But as weeks turned into months, I noticed cracks. Jason's fake politeness had edges. He sighed whenever I walked into a room. He joked about how old folks need their own space. Jokes that weren't really jokes. I brushed it off because I didn't want Emily to feel torn. But then came the night everything changed. We were having dinner. Roast chicken, Emily's favorite. Jason leaned back in his chair, sipping wine, and with that smirk of his, he said, "Emily, your dad has been here for months. Don't you think it's time he contributed more? Maybe help around here? Serve us, maybe? After all, we're a young couple, and he's just here." Pause, long. The words hung in the air like poison. My heart froze. Serve them? In my own daughter's home? Like I was a maid, not her father? I turned to Emily, praying she would defend me. My little girl. My reason for living. But she didn't. She looked at me, her eyes cold, her voice sharper than I had ever heard, and said, "Dad, Jason's right. Either you start helping us, cooking, cleaning, serving, or maybe it's better you leave. I can't have tension in my home." Have you ever heard words that crush you so hard you feel your chest caving in? That was the moment. The little girl who once clung to my hand when she was scared, who I stayed up all night sewing Halloween costumes for, who I protected with everything inside me, was now looking at me not as a father, but as a burden. I don't know how I managed it, but I smiled. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even cry in front of them. I simply stood up, walked to my room, packed my small suitcase, and left. Forever. Let me stop here and ask you, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have fought back, yelled, demanded respect? Or would you have walked away quietly like I did? I want to know your thoughts. Share them in the comments, because maybe your advice will help another parent going through the same heartbreak. That night, I checked into a cheap motel room on the edge of town. The walls smelled of cigarettes. The sheets were thin, and the silence was unbearable. I lay there staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in decades, I cried until my chest hurt. I thought of Sarah. How, if she were alive, she would never have allowed this. She would have fought for me, for us. But I was alone. The next week was a blur of pain. No calls from Emily. No texts. Nothing. It was as if I had been erased from her life. I tried to fill the hours, applied for a part-time job at a gas station, walked in the park, sat on benches watching families laugh. Every time I saw a father holding his daughter's hand, I felt a knife twist in my chest. Days passed. Then one evening, my old flip phone buzzed. 23 missed calls, with emphasis all from Emily. My hand shook as I stared at the screen. Why now? Why suddenly? I didn't answer. I let it ring. The voicemail notifications piled up. Finally, I pressed play. Her voice broke in panicked, sobbing, "Dad, please pick up. I need you. I was wrong. Jason isn't who I thought he was. Please call me back. I'm begging you." Now let me ask you again, what would you have done in that moment? Would you forgive right away? Or would you let them feel the same silence, the same pain they gave you? I sat there, phone in hand, my heart a storm. Part of me wanted to rush to her, to hold her, to protect her like I always had. But another part of me, the part that remembered her voice telling me to serve or leave, kept me frozen. I needed to see the truth for myself. So instead of calling her back, I drove to their neighborhood late that night, parked across the street from their perfect suburban house with the white picket fence. The curtains were drawn, but shadows moved inside. I waited. Minutes turned into hours. Finally, I saw it. Emily, standing in the living room, her face buried in her hands. Then Jason stormed in, grabbed her arm, yanked her so hard she stumbled. My blood boiled. He was yelling, his face twisted with rage. Then his hand raised, and he slapped her. My daughter, the girl I raised, the one I swore to protect. Pause, whispering. Do you see now why sometimes silence is more powerful than any scream? In that moment, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt like a storm. I called the police. They arrived quickly. Sirens flashing, neighbors peeking from windows. Jason was taken away in handcuffs. Spitting curses, his polished mask ripped away. Emily stood on the porch, tears streaming down her face, broken in a way I had never seen. She looked up, and across the street, our eyes met. Her lips trembled as she whispered one word, "Dad." Long pause, and I turned and walked away. Not because I didn't love her, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed her to understand the cost of betrayal. Sometimes, the deepest lesson is learned not when someone stays, but when they finally leave. The next day, I rented a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Emily called again and again, her voicemails filled with apologies, regret, begging me to come back. "Dad, I need you. I'm sorry. Please don't leave me again." But this time, I didn't rush. I let her feel the silence. 2 weeks later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Emily stood there. She was thinner, her eyes swollen from crying. She collapsed to her knees, clutched my hands, and sobbed, "Dad, I was blind. I forgot who you were, what you did for me. Please forgive me. Please come home." In that moment, My heart cracked wide open. I pulled her into my arms, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I never left you, Emily. You left me. But now, if you're ready, we'll start again." And just like that, the years of pain began to soften. That, my friends, is a strange thing about love. It doesn't vanish, even under betrayal. It hurts. It scars. But it can also heal. I forgave her, not for Jason, not for the world, but for us, for Sarah. Who would have wanted her family whole? Now, before I end this story, I want to ask you one last time. What would you have done? Would you have forgiven? Or would you have closed that chapter forever? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might just help another father, mother, son, or daughter who's listening right now. Life is short. Sometimes revenge is silence. Sometimes forgiveness is the loudest victory.